Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Edith Reitzis, Director of Outreach and Development for Friends of the Danielle Centers. We're recording the session today, as Mayor just said, and we send it out later to you all. And feel free to send it to your networks. These are really important topics. The more people that get it from you as a reputable source, the more knowledge and correct information we can be spreading. We'd like to ask everybody to mute their microphones and put questions that you might have for Ofir a little later in the chat. And of course, we will leave ample time for Q&A. I wanted to do a quick note, as you probably know, obviously, Mayor Tamara, Ofir, myself, and several others are in Israel. So if we get an alarm warning, we will. I can take my laptop into the shelter, so we will continue, and hopefully Ofir can continue as well. We are now in week
Yeah,
three.
I don't have a mamad, so if
Ah,
there's an alarm, I have to actually go out to the
ah,
street. So I'll have
okay.
to
We'll
come
pause
back
it
later
then.
if that happens.
Let's hope that we have a quiet night now and for the rest of the night. We're now, as you know, in week three with this war with Iran and of course Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the added threat of cluster bombs have been added into the layer and mix of things. And if it wasn't bad enough, the anti-Semitism around the world continues to run rampant. In the past week alone, there's been six terrorist attacks on synagogues worldwide. Indeed, as you all know, Temple Israel in the Detroit metro area had a terrorist attack on Thursday, and Mayor literally was just there last year, sorry, not last week. Um, we know that reliable information is critical at this time with so many various news sources flooding our social media and news. And that's why we're committed to organizing these briefings quickly and frequently. Many of you have reached out to see how we are doing, and we're really grateful for the love and support. On the last call, we talked about an immediate response to those in our community. We launched right as the war began an Olim Immigrant Resiliency Fund to support recent and new immigrants in our community who are choosing to make Israel their home. And most of them have no family or network to rely on in this time, and we are their family. So we are we started this thing called the Olim Resiliency Fund, and I wanted to introduce Tamara Golan, our External Relations and Resource Development Coordinator in Tel Aviv. She made Aliyah in 2017, so she knows what it's like to come here as an American. She helped found our Young Olim group. So Tamara, I'm going to hand it to you to talk really quickly about our fund, and then we'll get the program started.
Absolutely. Thank you, Edith. So, as Edith mentioned, my name is Tamara. I work with Mayor in the Daniel Centers in Israel. And yes, almost 10 years ago, I chose to come to Israel for 1 year and never left. And so I'm here. I came alone. I had no family, no support system. But in my first year here, I fell in love with the land, with the food, with the people here. And as Edith mentioned, the people here, and especially in the Beit Daniel community and the Daniel Centers community, have truly become a home. I'm originally from Detroit, and so on Thursday, when the news broke, my mother, who works in a synagogue in Detroit, not Temple Israel, but another one very close, immediately called me when the lockdown was first initiated, and it was the first time I broke down during this war. I haven't broken down for any of the rockets, for any of the booms, for any of the sirens. When I heard that there was a terrorist attack in my hometown, in the synagogue that I went to when I was in high school, knowing that my mom was there and I had no way to help, all of a sudden my phone started flooding with messages from the Daniel Center's staff, from the Daniel Center's community. And that's exactly why we started this Olim Resiliency Fund, is because we truly are the family and the chosen community of a lot of these Olim. And so we've started doing monthly Shabbat dinners. We do a Hebrew happy hour to help Olim practice their Hebrew in a more relaxed way. And especially now, during the stress of the war, we've started doing some support groups. This Wednesday, we will be joined by Rebecca Fishman, who is a licensed psychologist who will do a workshop with us on resiliency and mental fitness to help these Olim learn how to be able to go into the shelter with all of the adrenaline and all of the stress and nervousness of there's a missile being shot at me, and be able to just take a second and breathe and be able to calm down and continue in life. Because at the end of the day, that's what it means to be Israeli. And so this fund is directly impacting hundreds of Olim that are part of the Daniel Centers. And so it's very, very impactful and important. Thank you, Edith.
Thank you. Thank you. We're very glad your mom is okay, of course, and everybody else. It could have ended it far worse.
We should add in this point, Edith, that part of the Olim community is people that are doing conversion in our classes. And we have about 300 people every year in our conversion classes. A lot of them stories of people that came by themselves to Israel for different reasons. People that need support in Russian and in English, in Spanish, and just name it. And it's the work that is done in this field is amazing. And those people during this time is really in need for support, mental support, and sometimes just to talk to somebody, and we're there for them. So thank you for your support and love. And Tamar is a good example of how it works. It works. So.
Yeah, it really does. I wanted to quickly say we have some newcomers on the call, and we're always happy to see new faces and our longstanding friends. We are going to be entering our 35th year. Since we've founded, we've committed ourselves to connecting Israelis to an inclusive and tolerant Judaism. We do this because we know that when Reform Judaism thrives in Israel, so does democracy, pluralism, women's rights, and other minority rights. And for us, Israelis from all walks of life come to the Daniel Centers to experience the beauty of Judaism, of prayer, of ritual, of community, of social justice. And we do this because, thanks to the generosity of our supporters. We know that you, like us, believe that a pluralistic Jewish landscape doesn't weaken Israel, it only strengthens her. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to a wonderful supporter of ours, Tad Schwab. He and his wife, Sandy, have been longtime members of our community, as we like to say. And Tad had a long and rewarding career in the fashion industry, working for Ralph Lauren children's wear, and then has remained active in many leadership roles, and currently serves on the Leadership Council of the World Union for Progressive Judaism. And he also helped create a partnership between Shenkar College in Israel and Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and serves on several committees and the South Palm Beach County Jewish Federation, mostly involving global world Jewry and Israel. So without further ado, Tad is going to introduce Ofir, and we'll get started.
Before I start, Sandy and I have always enjoyed supporting the Daniel Center, which allows us to help strengthen a more democratic and religiously tolerant Israel society, which is something very important to both of us. For me, it is a pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Ofir Dayan. Ofir is part of a remarkable new generation of Israeli leaders who are helping shape the global conversation about Israel, anti-Semitism, and international security. She's currently a researcher at the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel, where her work focuses on issues that are front and center in today's world: the rise of anti-Semitism, the delegitimization of Israel, geopolitics, international security, and Israel's evolving relationship with countries like China. But Ofir's perspective doesn't come only from the academic world. Before her research career, she served in the Israel Defense Forces, reaching the rank of captain and serving as an IDF spokesperson in several critical assignments. In addition to her military and policy work, Ofir has become an important voice on a challenge, of many of us, which has been a growing concern, which is university campuses across the West. While studying at Columbia University, she saw firsthand the rise of hostility toward Israel and the spread of anti-Semitism among students. That experience led her to write her powerful book, The Intifada on the Hudson: How Israel is Losing the Young People of the West. At Columbia, she earned both her BA in International Relations and her Master's in International Security Policy, and she served as president of Students Supporting Israel, advocating for Jewish and Israeli students at a very challenging time. Ofir brings together something quite rare: a perspective of a soldier, a scholar, and a passionate advocate who has seen these challenges from the front lines. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Ofir Dayan.
Thank you. That was a very nice introduction.
Yeah. Yeah, and we should add that she is very popular today in Israel. A lot people sees her, hear about her views through the papers called Makor Rishon, and different articles in different places, television, media. So feel welcome to this gathering.
Thank you. It's a
Friends
pleasure
of
to be here.
Yeah, friends of Beit Daniel and Daniel Centers. And Ofir just joined us after doing another Zoom with another Jewish leadership group from North America. So thank you for joining us. And I can tell you that a week ago, when we ended our conversation with Professor Emmanuel Trachtenberg, by the way, we got a lot of comments, really comments from his talk. When I asked Emmanuel, as a friend of mine, a congregant of ours, well, Emmanuel, who can do the work next time? Probably the war won't end it. And he says immediately, call to Ofir Dayan. I called to Ofir, and she said immediately yes. He said, Emmanuel Trachtenberg, she's a brilliant person. She's a smart lady, and she will be a major leader in the Jewish arena in Israel. So go to her. So Ofir immediately agreed to be here. So thank you for taking the time and to meet us and talk to us. And this evening, when my wife just went to her work in the radio, in the Army spokesman, she asked me, "Who is your guest tonight?" I said, "Ofir." I said, "Oh, Ofir, I just had a course with her. And she's a brilliant woman, and I just learned. I didn't know when we talked to her that you are the daughter of Danny Dayan, that many of you know. So his term as the Consul General in New York, he's did a wonderful job with the Jewish community, with the liberal Jewish community. So thank you, Ofir, for being here with us.
Thank you.
I just heard Ofir, an hour ago, 2 hours ago, from the chief of staff of the Israeli army, that Hezbollah is fighting for his life. Let's talk a little bit about Hezbollah, about the war in the north, and about Iran, and then we'll go to the main topic this evening: anti-Semitism, Israel, North America, United States. Few words about what you hear in your institution. It's a really institution that led for a long time by Emmanuel Trachtenberg. What is the feeling among scholars, people that are outside from the army rank or the government rank? What they think about the situation in the north and with Iran in this point of time?
So I think it's very, very interesting because Lebanon for the past 2.5 years has always been a secondary arena. At first, Gaza was the main focus, and Lebanon was the secondary one. And now Iran is first and foremost, and then Lebanon is the secondary arena again. And in terms of Lebanon, things are changing daily. Just this morning, Israel Time, the Israeli defense minister, declared that Israel will be sending or already sent ground troops into Lebanon. And in Iran, it's a completely different issue that I will touch on in a second, but it is important to talk about Lebanon because there, I will try to phrase it correctly, but I think that many outside Israel fail to see why Israel is, quote unquote, so obsessed with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Why do we keep sending ground troops into Lebanon? Why we keep bombing Lebanon? I think it is important to understand that for the past 3 years almost, people living in northern Israel, especially on what is called the confrontation line, so right on the border and a few hundred meters from the border with Lebanon, have no day, no night. Their children are traumatized. Those of them who returned home after being evacuated following October 7th, because the mighty Radwan forces of Hezbollah planned to infiltrate Israel and do a much larger scale October 7th style attack in the northern communities in Israel. So it is important to understand that the Israeli operations in Lebanon are not just a craze or an obsession that Israel has. The Israeli citizens in northern Israel are demanding their government, and I think rightfully so, to once and for all eliminate this threat of Hezbollah. I would say, as an Israeli citizen, I'm very pleased to see that, unlike in the past and including in the last 3 years, the Lebanese government has changed. The Lebanese government wants to enforce its rule over southern Lebanon as well. And they even, the Lebanese new prime minister even offered direct talks with Israel, which is a huge development. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it is important to understand that according to Lebanese law, Lebanese citizens are not allowed to talk to Israelis. So the fact that the Lebanese prime minister offers something like that, I think, is extremely important. In that regard, I know it's maybe not something that penetrated the news cycle, the already busy news cycle in the US or wherever you might be, but now the government is considering revoking the natural gas agreement that was signed in the last government between Israel and Lebanon. In my opinion, that would be a mistake. We see the Lebanese government coming towards the Israeli government trying to curtail Hezbollah, and I think we should work with them instead of punishing them. In terms of Iran, that's a whole different issue. And I assume we'll talk later about the narratives that are coalescing around Israel since the start of the war with Iran. But it is important to understand from the Israeli point of view that for years, Israeli citizens have been terrified of a confrontation with Iran. It was, let's use their language, the big Satan. People here were extremely afraid what would happen. And we were prepared for hundreds of tens of thousands of civilians killed or injured, and Tel Aviv city center being demolished. And that did not happen. And now Israeli citizens realize that we can perhaps guarantee a safer future for our citizens and the next generations by eliminating two of the most important threats posed by Iran, which is the nuclear program and the ballistic missiles program, and obviously the proxy, which we just discussed in Lebanon and in other places. And I think that that's the main thing. And unlike in the US, where this war, and even more so in Europe, when this war is extremely controversial, in Israel, it's not controversial at all. According to a survey that the INSS did last week, more than 80% of Israelis support this war. Despite having to run for shelter, despite having to work from home for the past 3 weeks, Israelis overwhelmingly support this war because they understand this is an existential threat for Israel and for their lives and their children. And I think for many Israelis, it is very hard to understand why the world is not as supportive of this war as Israelis are. And the last thing I'm going to say that I think there's some sort of a gap between how Israeli citizens perceive this war and how decision makers in Israel and the United States and in Europe perceive this war. I think, I don't think I know because of our survey that I can send to you later. Many Israelis want to see this war waged until the Iranian regime is toppled. This is by no means an official goal of this operation. The decision makers in Israel and the United States repeated that multiple times. This is not a goal of this operation. But Israelis are overwhelmingly, I think it was 60-something% support waging this war until this regime is toppled. And there's two things. First of all, it's not a stated goal of this operation. Second of all, even in terms of likelihood, it's not very likely to happen, as we heard from Israeli officers and decision makers in the past week who said, and in the American media that the regime is unlikely to fall very soon. And if so, even if the regime collapses, there is no alternative right now. I always make this comparison to pre-state Israel. We had the Jewish Agency, and everyone fell in place. As soon as Israel was established, we knew who is going to take care of the finances and who is going to do Aliyah and who is going to do public outreach. That doesn't seem to exist in the Iranian opposition as of now.
Here, can we stand a long war with Iran and Lebanon? It looks in the beginning that it might, ended in a week, 2 weeks. We're entering the third week. And the talks now is that, well, they survive and they're going to be there for a long time. And Hezbollah just again and again says, we're fighting for our life. This is a fight that we won't end without, we won't end tomorrow. So how long which means Israel, the West, United States can handle, how long we can stand this war?
I think it's important to divide this question into two. First of all, Israeli public proved to be very resilient in the last 2.5, 3 years. According to our survey, most Israelis say they're willing to live like that more than a month, up to a month, in order to diminish the capabilities of the Iranian regime. Hezbollah is a whole different issue, but I think that after the war with Hamas in the last 2.5 years, everyone realized it's not going to be a short war. If we can't eliminate Hamas, the smallest of the proxies, for 2.5 years, I think everyone understands that we can't do something similar in Lebanon, let alone in Iran, in such a short period of time. But it's also understood here that it's not the same. Iran is a country, 92 million people. We are not looking to do the same as we did in Gaza. It's just not the same situation. But what I'm more worried about, or at least I think I'm worried about because that's the topic of my research and that's what I do on my day-to-day, is how long can we go in terms of international public support for this war? Because I think that if this war will end in the near future, it's not because we ran out of rockets or the pilots are too tired. Like, that's not going to be the scenario. The scenario is that one day President Trump is pressured by the MAGA base or the isolationists who are going to tell him, listen, this is not what we voted for. You promised us during the campaign to be a president of peace, to end wars, not to start them. We do not want to fund Israel with such, a lot of money and weaponry, and we don't want American soldiers who, I think more than 10 already perished in the battlefield since this operation in Iran began. We don't want to do that. And I think that is the more probable scenario in terms of ending this war, that one day President Trump will say, you know what? And if you follow his statements, he keeps the door open at all times. That we obliterated their Navy, we obliterated their Air Force, and at any moment he can just say, okay, so that means we won and now we're stopping. But what I'm most worried about is two things. First of all, is this notion that seems to take hold in many circles in the West, that Israel dragged the United States to this war. It didn't help that President Trump said, well, Israel didn't drag me. If anything, I dragged Israel. Nobody buys that.
Even his foreign minister and
right. So Rubio said something and then retracted, but the Speaker of the House and certainly there has been discussions about Israel dragging the United States into this war, and I think we can explain it by a few things. First of all, it fits neatly into perceptions of Jews in the diaspora. In the extreme sense of something called the ZOG, the Zionist Occupied Governments. It's anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that say that there are Zionist occupied governments with Zionist used as a nicer way to say Jews, that Jews control the Western governments, and therefore the Western governments do not serve their own citizens, but serve a collective Jewish interest instead of their own citizens. And this is something that I've been seeing in my research in the past 3 weeks that has been extremely prominent among far right and far left circles on social media. If you're familiar with the horseshoe theory, that means that they don't agree on anything until they meet at the very bottom. And the very bottom is anti-Semitism and hate for Israel. So we see both far right and far left propagating this idea of excessive Jewish control over the government. And the second thing is that I think, and this is where I point the finger at us at Israel, that for many years we failed to show the American and European public, especially the American and especially the isolationist, we failed to show them how valuable Israel is for American interest. And therefore now when a war like this is waged, they look at it as the United States is serving Israeli interests. They don't view it as this is an American interest, that Israel is aligning with the United States and helping the United States achieve its goals. They look at it as though the United States is serving us. And I think, humbly, it's a wrong way to look at it. President Trump, I don't know if to believe that or not, said that the Iranians are developing missiles capable of reaching US soil. So that has to be a threat on the American people. And even that, if that's not true, they certainly do have already missiles capable of hitting American interests and bases in the Middle East. They are capable of reaching Europe. So it is definitely not just an Israeli interest. It's an American interest. And I will argue two more things here. First of all, which is a realpolitik slash a very I know it's not a nice argument to make, but the United States weapons industry also need to be combat proven. Engaging in such wars, especially testing American weapon capabilities against those of Chinese and Russians who are supplying Iran with weaponry, is definitely beneficial for the American industry. And the last thing that I think is that it's really in American interest, because if the United States wishes to still be the sole superpower on the global stage, that's one of the prices it has to pay. A global superpower needs to do policing sometimes, even if they think it's costly or a waste of time. That's a part of a job of a global superpower. And I get the impression that the United States still wants to be the only global superpower.
Ofir, you talk about world relationship, world arena. Talk for a minute about China. You are expert on China. You write a lot about it. How would China see this war? And then we'll go to anti-Semitism and go back to
Okay,
the
so
arena.
I just I
China has
haven't
a major
written
issue
about
in this.
China
Yeah.
for a very long time, but I will try my best to convey what's going on there. For China, it's very convenient to get the United States involved in the Middle East. The United States is wasting money, getting soldiers killed. It's very convenient for China. Now there is a situation where Trump is demanding China to help clear the Hormuz Straits. I will assume that it's unlikely that China will join in on this effort. We have seen the United States trying to get China involved in anti-piracy efforts before. China didn't really join any of those. So I think for China, on the one hand, it's very it's very comfortable that the United States is becoming more and more engaged here and drawing out of the Taiwan Strait and the Indo-Pacific at large. But another thing that we need to remember, it really depends how this whole issue is going to end. Because if this war ends with something that could be perceived as an American victory or an American success, that would make the Gulf states even closer to the United States, that would be bad for China. But if the Gulf states, and that's not a very far-fetched idea that this ends when the Gulf countries are saying to the United States, "Why did you drag us to this war? We got bombed like no time in the past, and this is because of you. And now we're reshuffling our cards and maybe." Going a bit more towards the China end of the hedging spectrum. So I think that's where it stands. And I think at some point, although it wasn't very apparent in the second Trump administration, the Trump administration in the end is going to rebalance its posture and understand that China is the most important or imminent threat or competitor to the United States. So I think that's also going to be reflected in how long this war is going to last.
Okay, you wrote a I think very interesting article last weekend in Makor Rishon about the need of Israel to work in two different arenas, talking about anti-Semitism, doing hasbara, the right side and the left side of the map. Can you talk a little bit about those two frontiers that are no less important than one that goes in Lebanon and Iran, losing
100%. Look, there is a reason that I researched this field in the Institute for National Security Studies. I think there's an understanding here that the public image of Israel and its standing is a matter of national security. Because in the past 2.5 years, Israel was under a de facto arms control from all countries of the world besides the United States. This risks Israeli national security, no doubt. And I think that in order to best do that, and I'll give you a little spoiler, in a few weeks, I am publishing a very, very large research, like a mini book or a booklet in the INSS about Israeli public diplomacy and how we can reinvigorate it following October 7th and the war.
We should tell to our viewers that your book, that was really a bestseller in Israel and a good book, Hudson, the Intifada on the Hudson, about anti-Semitism in America, and usually in the college, in the universities, is going to be published in English as well very soon.
Exactly, before the end of this year. So that's also very exciting. I see some of you when I come in the book tour. I think that Israel, in order to best navigate the situation, and I think this is where we're going to get a bit more political, but I think it's necessary. Israel must understand that for its own national security, it cannot solely rely on the Republican Party. We can't, for two reasons. First of all, I know that there are people in the Israeli leadership who are in deep denial, but the United States is going to have a Democratic president one day. It's going to happen. The United States presidency is not going to be indefinitely in Republican hands. It's just not going to happen. And so we need to re-find common language with American liberals. And I must say here, look, I'll give full disclosure. I grew up in the Samaria. I grew up a settler. I still consider myself one, although I live in Haifa now, and I am very much on the right of the Israeli political map. However, I think that some of the directions this current Israeli government is taking are not just adversarial to any liberal party outside of Israel. It will be increasingly harder to even find common language with the Democratic Party, with the Labour Party in the UK, and with other liberal parties across the world. And I think this is extremely, extremely dangerous. I voted for right-wing leaning parties my entire life. I think this. I think there is no doubt that this government is more to the right of any other government that Israel had, and even if those are the positions that their ministers are holding, at least they should try to have an olive branch ready and try to discuss with different political parties, chief among them the Democratic Party in the United States. not just that it's not happening at the moment. I think, and we saw that astonishingly under President Biden, who, I don't need to tell you, President Biden has been amazing after October 7th. He came here to Israel and he said, don't, although some people say that don't was also aimed at Israel, but it doesn't matter. He came here and he hugged us, Israeli citizens, and he kept sending here munitions, although some of them were delayed, but all in all, and supported us diplomatically and in the UN. And I think there is an understanding here in the right of the political map in Israel that it's not just okay or acceptable, it's also preferable to butt heads with the Biden administration and with the Democratic Party more broadly. I think it's a grave mistake that I already regret, but I think Israel is going to regret for the long term. Again, we will have a Democratic president, and we're only pushing the Democratic Party farther to the left and away from Israel. Instead of strengthening voices like, again, full disclosure, my very good friend Richie Torres, who has been an amazing supporter of Israel in the Democratic Party. And others in the Democratic Party as well. He's just one person. Instead of strengthening them, we are making it increasingly harder for them to support Israel. Because not only that we don't talk to them, when they approach us during the war in Gaza, for example, and they asked us for explanation, even if we had good explanations, we didn't want to give it to them. And we failed to supply them with ammunition to fight on behalf of Israel. And I will say one more thing before I move to the other side of the political map, because I think it's important. The IDF and I served in reserves during the last war in Gaza as a division spokesperson. And I can tell you that the division I served in, as well as the entire of the IDF, did their utmost to comply with international law. And in the vast majority of the time, it also succeeded. Okay? But I think the politicization of Hasbara or public diplomacy or whatever you want to call it meant that while the IDF is restricting itself and putting soldiers at risk to comply with international law, for some reason, to the outside world, we did our utmost to show that we disregard international law. And we had ministers saying that we need to drop an atomic bomb on Gaza and similar statements, which were abhorrent. And not only that we didn't do those things that we did, we suffered like we did it. And I think that was very, very stupid. Pardon my French. Now I'm going to move to the other side of the political map, because one of the reasons that we can't solely focus on the Republican Party is that we're losing vast crowds in the Republican Party as well. And not just the Republicans, also conservative parties in Europe. They are becoming more and more isolationist. They might love Israel deeply and care about Israel and be ardent Zionists, but still say, we don't want to help Israel as much as we don't want to help Ukraine or Taiwan. And so, first of all, I discussed earlier, we talked earlier about how we need to show them how valuable Israel is for American interest. But we can't rely on just the Republican Party. And I think this is the right time to also mention another trend that is happening in the right-wing circles in the United States and very much so in Europe as well, that many of the youth are going more and more to the right, more and more reconnecting to their Christian, white, nationalist identity. And this brings with it grave consequences for the Jewish people and for Israel, because the more they are connected to their white nationalist Christian identity, the more they harbor anti-Semitic views, even if they would not say it out loud, but some of them do say it out loud, as we saw Nick Fuentes and similar people. And I think that's increasingly a threat to the Jewish communities in the West. And I think that if we think that our relationship with the Republican Party is so productive and good, this is one of the first things that we should raise with senior leaders of the Republican Party, that they cannot allow this menace of anti-Semitism to spread like it is inside their ranks. So I'm just going to end with one thing here, just to demonstrate how mainstream it become. Forget Tucker Carlson, we all know that example. The Young Republican Group of New York, a group that is a part of the Republican Party, a group that was led
That's
by
a second of fear.
Yeah, alarm.
You can hear the siren. It says it's the
Tel Aviv.
introduction for the siren in Tel Aviv.
Introduction.
They just announced us that
Spoiler alert for it.
We have to improve our position and go close to a shelter. It might lead to a siren in a few minutes. So this is Tel Aviv. This is not.
I'm still clear.
Not Sidit. So
Right.
All clear in Haifa. We're good.
Yeah.
If you will hear the siren,
so we're with you all.
we'll evacuate the
We're in the
room.
safe zone.
Ofir and Edith will continue. But this is how it sounds. This is every telephone for 1 million people right now around Tel Aviv got this message, and this is how it sounds. You cannot close it. This
like an Amber Alert. It's the same sound, I think, of an Amber Alert.
It's the same sound as an Amber Alert, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think this is one of the things that we have to discuss with our Republican friends in the United States and with the conservative parties in Europe, because this menace of anti-Semitism among the youth is extremely concerning. I'm going to end here for the next question.
Is there any chance to talk to people like Tucker Carlson or people from the other side, from the left, that went to a corner like Carlson from the right, talking about Chabad and Hitler never tried to kill Jews or didn't think about killing Jews? I mean, can we talk to people? What happened to the West from your perspective as an Israeli that stood there, lived there in North America? What happened there?
I think the slide from anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism is very, very easy for some people. I've seen it happen with my own eyes when I studied at Columbia. It's very, very easy to detect when you turn from an anti-Zionist into an anti-Semite. In terms of speaking to those people, I think, look, there's several layers when we're looking at it. First of all, you have to eliminate all those who wouldn't be willing to talk to us. And there are many. The second layer is people who would be willing to talk to us for the sake of provocation and likes on social media, but are not very prominent or well known, and we shouldn't legitimize them by giving them a stage and by talking to them. Then there's the Tucker Carlsons of the world, who are extremely influential on social media, on traditional media, and also in the office of the Vice President of the United States, and therefore we need to do something about them. I think with Tucker Carlson, we saw it. Ambassador Mike Huckabee invited him to Israel, and he only came for the airport, conducted the interview in the airport, and flew back to the United States in a private jet. I don't know if Tucker Carlson is the example of someone who would talk to us. I would argue that as long as the person is not lost, as long as it's not wasting your time and resources, it is worth talking to them. However, I think there are so many people, I don't know if so many, but there are people who are beyond the pale that it doesn't matter what you say, you're not going to convince them. So I think it's a waste of resources. When I studied at Columbia, I used to say that 20% are pro-Israel, 20% are anti-Israel, and the rest are somewhere in the middle. I think those numbers shifted a bit. I think now we lean toward more, 30, 40% anti-Israel, 15% pro-Israel, but still the vast majority, and I know it comes as a shock to most people, Israel is not the center of their universe, and they don't have a solidified opinion on Israel yet. But in this political climate, obviously they are being demanded to have an opinion about Israel. So I think it is crucial to talk to these people, not to the Tucker Carlson and the Candace Owens of the world. It is important to talk to those who we can still influence. And I think, it's something that I write in the research that I'm going to publish next month, is that we have, during the war in Gaza, we have given up on those people. And I think that's sad. We've given up on those people who are undecided, but tragically, we also gave up on the people who had an inclination to be more pro-Israel, at least understand the Israeli perspective. And instead of explaining to them why we did certain things that we did, we just said, oh, we'll talk after the war. And that's not a strategy. That's not something that we can afford to do.
Okay.
Mayor, I see we're coming on our time, and I wanted to see if we should, if you have another question, and or we should open it up for questions from our guests.
Yeah, please. So let's go to our guests' questions.
Okay, great. So give me 1 second.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course.
Because of this forum,
No,
I think that this conversation would not be complete without referring to the relationship between Israel and diaspora Jewry. And this is something,
especially to the reform movement. I mean, we talk
exactly.
about it.
When I talk about diaspora Jewry, they're mostly reform and conservative anyways. So that's the vast majority of the diaspora Jewry, at least in the United States. Look, this is something that I care a lot about, and Mayor and Ted said earlier that, when I got to Colombia, I got to learn about, the different people and different views about Israel. I think one of the most important revelations that I had is the reform in the conservative movement. So I grew up in Israel, in a settlement. There were no reform or conservative people anywhere to be found around me. And the time that I lived in New York was the first time that I had to, I had the opportunity to engage with reform and conservative movements. I'll try very short and concise to tell you one story that I tell in every talk that I give, because I think is telling of the relationship between Israel and diaspora Jewry. After the massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, I arrived there the following Shabbat to do a Shabbat with the community, and I foolishly thought that it's going to strengthen. I'm going to strengthen them, whatever. Obviously, it was the other way around, and I got there, and there was obviously an Israeli flag on the bima, like very well. There is in every synagogue. I wasn't aware of that, and we prayed. It was Friday night, and we prayed, and although I grew up in a settlement, non-religious, but still, they all knew the prayers way better than I did. And they prayed for the safety of the state of Israel and the safety of IDF soldiers. And this is a community who 6 days later, before that, lost 11 of its members. And in their sorrow, they prayed for the state of Israel. And for me, it was a very, very, very emotional moment. And following the service, I don't remember if it was the rabbi or the chazan. They said, for the anthem, please rise. And a room full of 500 American Jews all sang Hatikva, because they knew that when you say the anthem in a synagogue, it's the anthem of the Jewish people. And again, this was for me, it was extremely meaningful. But I think the most important thing was that after the prayer, a man approached me. I assume he was roughly the age of my dad, and he asked me if I was from Israel. And I said, yes, why? And he looked in the eye and said, when you go back home, tell them we're Jewish. And I talk for a living, and it's been almost 8 years, and I still don't have an answer for this person. A man who lost 11 of his
can you hear
fellow congregants.
Siren from Tel Aviv.
Okay, bye, Mail.
Yeah. So Tamara and I are going to leave you because this is how the sirens.
We'll keep it running until you get back.
Okay.
Be safe.
We're going to the safety room. So,
okay.
Ofir and Edith, continue, please.
Of course. Of course.
So I'll finish the story quickly, and I still don't know what to tell him. And this is a man who 6 days before that lost 11 of his congregants because they're Jewish, because the terrorists stormed into the synagogue and screamed, all Jews must die. And he does not think that I, an Israeli citizen, or my state, the state of Israel, views him as a Jew. My first instinct was to object and say, no, of course we think, but I couldn't, because 2 days after the massacre, the then former chief rabbi of Israel was interviewed on Israeli radio, and he was asked about this massacre, and he said it was a horrible massacre in a building with a prominent Jewish symbol. And it couldn't have been a synagogue because it's a conservative synagogue and not an Orthodox one. And for me, that kind of talk, it really bruised my heart, because I think this, alongside other things like the Western Wall situation, and now the proposal by a member of Knesset Avi Maoz to de-recognize Reform and Jewish conversions, those to me are the exact opposite of Am Yisrael Chai. They are in our own hands, tearing this 3,000 years old chain that linked us and American Jewry and European Jewry and world Jewry together. And to me, this is one of the biggest strategic mistakes that Israel is making at the moment. I will just say one more sentence about that, and I'm sorry if it's going to be out of place, but everything I said right now does not mean that American Jewish community or Jewish diaspora as a whole does not have any responsibility for the state of relations between them and the state of Israel. I think there has been many mistakes made. One of them is, of course, of the reform movement with the the moving of the American embassy to Jerusalem, a move that was in a wide consensus in the Israeli public, and the reform movement issued a statement condemning President Trump for moving the embassy. I think it was own goal, to use soccer terms. It angered a lot of people in Israel, and I think rightfully so. But in the end of the day, we Israeli Jews are the older siblings here. We're the state, and therefore we have more of a responsibility to the future of this relationship than diaspora Jewry. And I wish sometime the state of Israel will understand that, because I think that every day that we don't is harm that is very, very, very hard to fix later. This is not how you treat a family. That's it. That was something that was very important for me to say, and now we can do as many questions as you want.
Ofir, I think ending on that note is really, I think it means a lot to the American Jewish community and the people here on this call. And I think that when there are dark days, but hearing somebody like you, who I can say objectively is younger than all of us here, hearing that we have counterparts and people like you, and I'm sure others, and we just have to continue this dialogue and building these bridges, to me is words of encouragement. It makes me feel
no other option.
Right.
We're
as
destined
mayor
to be a
and
family. That's what it is.
right. And as mayors and Tamara are running to the shelter, I think we should be this positive note that you left us with. And so we do have a few seconds left. I know there's a few questions. One of them is a tactical military one.
And
is
if we
why
don't
are
get
there-
to all of them, I wrote my email at the
Yes,
beginning of
we
the
will.
chat. Please reach out to me.
That's so kind of you. So one of our questions is, why are there, Israeli troops in Lebanon on the ground necessary now?
Yeah.
Israelis, like in the past, lost many soldiers in guerrilla warfare. Why do this again?
Okay, so I think it is important to understand that aerial bombings are not able to root out the entire threat. Aerial bombing does not neutralize homes that are filled with bombs and munitions. We need to, and I think that rightfully so, we would have a lot of criticism waged at Israel if we just bombed all the southern Lebanon villages instead of going there and going house to house and confiscating and eliminating the munitions that they have there. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that we have to do. I really, really hope that in the future we would not have to do that, because the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army would be stronger than they are right now and will be able to enforce their own sovereignty over southern Lebanon. But we are not there yet, unfortunately. We're moving there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, another question was following on this. Is there any coordination with the Lebanese army in a constructive way? Or you just said we're moving there. Do you see?
So yes, I don't know all the details, but after the last ceasefire, in the hospice of President Trump, he initiated this consultation mechanism between Israel and Lebanon. And now when Israel identifies a risk in Lebanon, it interacts. There's an American intermediary between Israel and Lebanon. Of course, there is no direct talks, but Israel notifies the Americans. The Americans notify the Lebanese army, and if the Lebanese army is able to address this threat, they address it, and if they don't, Israel addresses it. I wish that could happen more and lean more towards the Lebanese army deals with it. But unfortunately, they're unable and frankly afraid of Hezbollah, which is, I think, understandable.
Yeah. And one final question. I know there is some interest, and you discussed about China. Can we just have a few seconds more talk about the relationship with China now?
Yeah.
And Tad,
Okay.
I'm assuming you meant Israel's relationship?
So I think it is important to understand that the relationship between Israel and China is very much a complicated one. It has a lot of facets. On the one hand, China is Israel's third largest trading partner, and therefore Israel needs China. We mostly trade goods and not services, but it doesn't matter. Israel needs China. And of course, it doesn't want to anger the second largest superpower in the world. That would not be wise. And so Israel is willing to turn a blind eye to many, many things that China is doing. Just recent examples, China sent an envoy to the ICJ, to the ongoing case that South Africa filed against Israel. And this person, the Chinese diplomat, spoke in very, very harsh terms against Israel. Something that no other country did. Even countries who joined South Africa to the appeal did not send a representative to tell off Israel like that in the ICJ. So, and Israel said nothing. Obviously, there's been talks behind the scenes, but really nothing too significant. The other side of this relationship is the United States, of course. The United States limits a lot of Israel's interactions with China. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been the architect of the Israel-China relationship. He has been to China. He initiated the Innovation Summit, the yearly Innovation Summit between China and Israel. But the United States at some point decided to say, okay, you're going too far. I don't know if some of you remember the Harpy incident with the drones that Israel sold China. The United States is very worried that American technology, especially military technology, is going to leak through not just Israel, but the Gulf states as well, who have good relations with China, from the US through the Middle East to China. So Israel now has a committee that is in charge of overseeing sales to China in order to regulate that. So I would say the relationship is cold on the diplomatic front, warmer in the trade aspect of it. And lately, there has been some friction, not very high volume yet, but still some friction around Taiwan. There is an amazing Taiwanese representative, the equivalent of an ambassador here in Israel. And Israeli members of Knesset have been going to Taiwan many, many times the past few years. And it's also added some friction to the relationship, especially where many in Israel and in Taiwan see ourselves on the same side of democracies versus autocracies, Iran and China. So it also adds complication.
I see that Mayor and Tamara are back. It's good to see you back. Ofir, this has been incredibly generous of you to give us your time and your insights, and also,
feel free to reach out. Really, hanging in.
Thank you so much. I would like to hand it actually over to Rabbi Peter.
Before that, Ofir just wrote her earlier her email address, so you can talk to her. So the email, you can write to her, and you can invite her to your community while she will do her tour Hudson, the Intifada on the Hudson.
Would love to.
Yeah, and invite her to your community. Again, you heard just a little bit. She's really a new power in the Israeli thinking power. So thank you, Ofir, for your time. And I'm sorry that I didn't hear the end of your remarks about our.
We'll fill you in. We'll fill you in.
I heard there's a recording.
Yes, there's a recording. And so we wanted to take a second, as Ofir mentioned about the Hatikva in the synagogues and prayers for the soldiers. We do this after every at the end of every session here. And we have Rabbi Peter Kasdan, who is going to do the prayer for Israel. And then we will have Gail Greenberg do the prayer for the U.S. soldiers. And so I'm going to hand it over to Peter.
Thank you,
And let me
Adi.
put it on the screen. Hold on. I forgot my job.
Before
Hold on.
hearing Peter,
Oh, thank you, Tammy.
I should mention that his son Andrew is here, and Henry
I
is one of
saw.
the leaders of Birthright, and this is amazing program, and Andrew is one of the main leaders of this program. So thank you, Andrew, for being this evening with us, and your father, the Rabbi Peter, that I know for so many years. Peter, thank you for being here for us.
And maybe I can ask you and Adit to stay on when this is over, because I have a very important question to ask you.
Okay,
Sure.
good.
Okay.
Always.
Thank you for this honor. Protector, rock, and redeemer of Israel,
Stay.
bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for our redemption. Shield it beneath the wings of your steadfast love, and spread over it the shelter of your peace. May a spark of your spirit inspire the actions of its president, prime minister, officials, judges, and advisors, that they may follow the path of righteousness, liberty, and freedom. Strengthen the hands of those who build and protect our Holy Land, and grant them salvation and life. Grant peace to this land and everlasting joy to its inhabitants. Be near to all the people of Israel throughout the lands of their dispersion. Plant within their hearts the love of Zion, and may those of our people who are so inspired come to Jerusalem, your city, which bears your name. Spread your spirit over all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot hatred, jealousy, and evil. Plant in our hearts love and peoplehood, peace and friendship, and speedily fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
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 Amen. And we actually have with us Tamara's mother from Detroit, who we thought it would be really lovely to have us say a few words and say the prayer for the U.S. soldiers as well.
Thank
Gail?
you. It's been an interesting time in Detroit this week, as you can imagine. I am fortunate to have been at a different synagogue where I run the school, but have very close colleagues, friends, parents of kids there. And my phone was blowing up with calls all day Thursday. We had parents in the parking lot here where, thank God, we were on lockdown, but did not have the same kinds of challenges, horrific terrorist things that Temple Israel had. The blessing is that Temple Israel people, Detroiters, are strong, and we are going to move past this and through this. And thank God, the terrorist pulled into a hallway that was so narrow that he couldn't get out of his car to do more of the damage that he wanted. Thank God for skilled and talented security guards. Thank God for teachers, staff who were well trained. The only injury other than the neutralization of the terrorist was one of the guards was hit by the car, and he is doing great. So thank you for the honor of doing this, and being a mom and watching my daughter have to turn off the camera and go to the mamad. It's like one of those things.
Surreal.
So
She's
I
used to
am,
that. She's used to that.
yes, but
And we love your
just like
daughter.
she was upset, I get upset too. And so
Yeah.
I am honored to read the prayer for the
Thank you.
soldiers. You're welcome. So I will let you put it up before I read it. Or Protector, rock, and redeemer of Israel, bless and watch over the soldiers of the United States who stand in defense of freedom and who fight alongside Israel in this hour of trial. Shelter them beneath the wings of your steadfast love and spread over them the canopy of your peace. Guard their going out and their coming in. Shield them from danger, from fear, and from harm. Strengthen their bodies, fortify their spirits, and grant them clarity of mind and courage of heart in moments of uncertainty. May a spark of your spirit guide their commanders and leaders, that they act with wisdom, restraint, and moral strength. May their service be marked by integrity and compassion, even in the midst of conflict. Sustain the families who await their return. Hold close the parents, partners, children, and friends who carry both pride and worry in their hearts. Let them feel your nearness and your comfort.
Amen.
Amen.
Mayor, if you want to say a few words, and then we know that it's past our hour mark.
So, guys, thank you very much for being with us. Ofir, thank you for your time and wisdom.
Thank
And
you.
all
Always
of
a
you,
pleasure.
be safe. We'll try to do our best to make Israel a better place during the time, this really terrible time,
Amen.
but later as well. We need to do so much in Israel to make Israel more progressive, liberal, and allow people from all walks of life to feel comfortable in the Jewish land, Jews, non-Jews. The mission is enormous, and we can do it. We can do it, with people like Ofir, with Dani Dayan, people. I mean, yes, we can do it. We did a wonderful job during the last 100 years. We shouldn't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we built here is wonderful. So help us to protect it and make Israel a place for the whole Jewish world, all Jewish people. And we need to continue the fight during the war and after the war. This is your mission, no less than our mission. So good luck to all of us. Toda rabba for being with us. And Ofir, again,
Toda rabba.
thank you very much for your time and wisdom.
And
Toda
thank you
all of you.
Thank you so
Would
Rise
much.
love
to
to
us.
visit you at your
Rise to us.
communities whenever.
Thank you.